Right, welcome. We have a special episode today. One I've been plugging for since episode 1, season 1. Now we're season 2, aren't we? So I can say that now. I'm joined here today by my very special friend, podcast extraordinaire, Joe Marler.
Oh. Yeah! I'm back.
You are. He's come all the way from
Heathfield.
the south coast.
Yeah, specifically Heathfield. 3.5 hours.
Tunbridge Wells, you said?
Well, that was where the train was.
Okay. We parked at the train station.
Oh, I'm paid for my ticket. Can I cover that back on expenses? Can I do
put it on expenses, mate, as well.
PCN, parking fine on your expenses?
Yeah, invoice us.
First and foremost, though, we do have to put a positive spin on Scrums because in recent times they've come under. I want to say recent times. But I reckon throughout the history of the game, everyone's gone, "Oh, I don't understand Scrums. Oh, they're boring. Oh, they're slow." And I don't think commentators or anyone in the media actually helps that and goes, "Well, if you didn't have Scrums, you wouldn't have Joe Marler and Dan Coulter run around in the 60th minute. It would be rugby league, basically."
There's also a lot of people that are for that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
for not having us.
Yeah, well, there is that, yeah. But like, as I say, we've talked to fullback rugby's for every size and shape and stuff in the game. And you do away with like Scrums, the front row, you know, we have what we offer in some areas we might not in others, but the game becomes one size fits all, whereas actually the game is not about that. It's also about different ways of winning games of rugby, which can be through your Scrum.
It's a massive part of our sport. It's a massive identity piece in our sport.
Do you think what makes rugby union different to every other sport is pretty much the Scrum, isn't it?
Throwing the ball backwards.
Rugby league do that.
Oh, yeah.
The line out, I'd say.
Line out.
Lads, how does a scrum feel?
It can feel really good or really bad, Ben.
All right, tell me the good ones. What when a scrum feels good, what's happened?
You've gone forward is probably the main thing, but also I will say this on a broader aspect. You have Scrums, right? And you think you've gone forward and we've absolutely smashed that. We've gone forward 10 metres and you've actually gone forward 3 centimetres. And similarly, it's like, well, we've been in everything in a Scrum feels amplified by about 200 times, I would say. So like you feel like you've gone forward or you've gone backwards, haven't you, in a Scrum? You're like, oh my God, I've got a hoof there. And you watch it back on videotape and you're like, you've stepped back 3 inches. And but at the time it's the worst thing in the world. But actually you watch it back and it's like, not to say it doesn't matter, it does matter, but it's, you know, the ball's been played away and all this kind of stuff.
When it's going well, like there's no better place for a front rower to be. When it's going bad, there's no worse place. Because in that moment, that obviously sometimes it takes a little bit longer, so it might be 30, 40 seconds or up to a minute or whatever. But in that moment, all eyes are on that Scrum. So like you've got to get it right. And if you don't, all eyes are still on that Scrum of you getting it wrong. And to be in there, the pressure that's not just physically, but psychologically, emotionally in that moment where you've got all eyes on you and you've got to get it right, you're like, don't want to that up. Or you just gently ask the guy opposite you to do a gentleman's agreement and then you just both look good. But Coley's never done that, so
You know when after you've had a really good scrum, right? Say you've won a penalty, you push them off it, whatever. Like once you stand up, that's obviously a huge, like, confrontational release, I suppose. Like, you know, but is it more like an individual? So obviously you two lock horns against each other, being loose head, tight heads. Obviously you've got respect for each other, but say you're playing against someone you didn't know and you drilled them. Is it like, yeah, that's all 8 of us? Or do you see it very much of like I've done him? Like, do you know what I mean? As in,
there is an individual battle.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The individual battle rather than
because obviously tight heads take on the loose head and vice versa and hookers and stuff. But at the same time, again, this is the great thing about the Scrum is like the tight head can't go forward unless the lock behind him is pushing, as long as the flank behind him is giving everything. Like, so although one person you might have individually won your matchup, say against the loose head or the tight head, you still have to rely on the people behind you to push. So it's always and the best Scrums are when all 8 gets together and in sync, and that can be very, very rare in your career. Actually, everyone's, you know what I mean? 8 people are doing their jobs all the time perfectly. But also the thing is, even if you do it once, you don't want to celebrate too hard because there's another Scrum coming up and it could go the other way totally. So it's quite humbling scrums, isn't it?
It's so technical in that aspect that, like you said, you can go be shit hot in one scrum and all 8 have piled into it. And then the fear of the opposite pack for the next scrum that builds up, going, they're going to try even harder. Knowing that if you don't get it quite as right, I think, then you could be the one going backwards yourself. So that's why it's so technical that you have to get it right every time, or as close to right every time.
So is it technical and having that mentality? Do you know what I mean? As in, does like bloody mindedness mentality save you, where maybe technically you got it wrong?
That'll get you so far.
Or-
It'll get you so far that you have to have an aggressive mindset, but it has to be like a controlled aggression. Because if you just look at it as an individual battle, and I'm just going hell for leather at this tight head on my own, I'll either, 9 times out of 10, I'll end up getting done, get my head shoved up my arse and screwing over my hooker because I've lost my connection with his shoulder, and screwing over the second row behind me because I've lost my hips out on him. And that, like, you have to have a certain level of aggression, but it has to be controlled, knowing that you need to work as that mini unit and then that collective unit as an 8 to actually get the result that you want, whether it's getting the right hand side up, left hand side, a square scrum, or it's a quick strike and you're getting the ball out because you keep moaning that it's not fucking coming out quick enough.
Mate, I love I've been at Leicester my whole career, mate. Love a scrum.
No, I know you do, but you still moan about getting the ball out quicker, don't you?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, fair enough.
But there's also like the technical side of the mentality side. If you do it technically, right, but you have to have the mental side to do it repeatedly. You know what I mean? Because you can be technically brilliant on one scrum, but then you have to have the mentality to be able to replicate that. And I always think like some guys can do it once, but can do it twice, 3 times, can do it in the 60th minute, 70th minute. I think the best guys are able to, which comes from the mentality of basically doing it, is replicate. Because I think the first scrum, the last scrum of the game should ideally look exactly the same as the first scrum of the game, which goes to your height, your setup, your balance, all that kind of stuff. And that comes from being, even though you're more fatigued, you still have to have the discipline and the mentality to go, right, this is what I need to do, bang, 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 and get it in position and actually execute what you're going to do. And you need 8 people, 7 other people to do that with you.
So when do you two scrummage against each other?
Yeah.
Joe, what are you trying to do to Coley? And Coley, what are you trying to do to Joe?
Okay. So let's just go like we're going against each other.
Yeah.
Like
That's
you're
the best
proper
way.
going against each other.
with Coley.
No GAs.
No GAs. Very, very few GAs knocking around. In fact, Coley's never given a GA, ever. I've asked him several times, not interested in the slightest. And I think sometimes his response has been, it's the only thing I'm good at, mate. Why would I concede it to you? I was like, all right, fuck you. I would... Ultimately, I'm trying to... Where the tight head and the loose head meet, I'm underneath him. I'm trying to get enough upwards drive to destabilise him out of his like strong low position by driving the power that's coming from behind me and the power that's in my arse and my neck, and trying to lift him, not lift him up. You can't drive, if you end up just driving up, you end up coming on the outside and then you become redundant. You've got to stay under him, and I'm trying to destabilise him so that he has to adjust his feet, and then I can get in a position where I'm going forward and can bring my hooker forward with me and then power through him. That's ultimately what I'm trying to do to Coley.
And then if you got it right, am I right in saying that Coley would end up having to turn in, and that's when you get under him, and then boom, the whole scrum goes straight through?
Fuck me.
Yeah, it's played tensionally.
Well played.
I know my shit.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you've got to think of like the front row as we basically decide, I think like almost like the up, down, side to side movement, but we are transmitting all the force behind us. Like you look at some of the second rows, you've got 125, 130 kilo second rows that are big men that are just pushing in one direction forward, and so you've got the flank as well beside you. So my job is to transmit the force from them through Joe. And so my ability, say if I'm tight against Joe, is I'm trying to put Joe in an uncomfortable position, say whether he rounds his he round back already, so whether I can round his back more or make him put pressure.
I thought we got past that after our first recording.
But if you think like if you're doing, say, I don't know, in the gym a squat, and then you're pushing upwards against the bar, but then as a tight end, I'm probably like I'm realistic because we do a squat. But if I'm trying to pull your head forward, So you can't then, your back will round and you won't be able to squat as much. So almost I'm trying to put you out of an ideal pushing position as a tight head to a loose head. And similar, loose head's trying to push a tight head. Probably if I'm squatting, you're always trying to push me backwards up into the air. So to stabilize you in that regard. And then say if I can break, say, Joe's shape or the loose head shape, that's when the pressure from behind, you're transmitting that force. So we're kind of like, yes, we push and that's our job, but a lot of us is the ability. That's why I think you have to be strong through your arse, your core, your neck. Is you're actually just transmitting force. I don't know what the word is, but you're basically just being used to push force through backwards and forward, aren't you?
That's where it comes back to when you asked, is it about an individual battle or is it an all-out thing? It has to be an all-out thing because we're just a vessel that's trying to transmit the power of the back five through it. Yes, if we get our shape wrong and all that, you can't transmit any of that power forward because it just stops at the first hurdle. You end up like me against Cittadini in fucking Italy.
Get the clip for you.
So we're that vessel, and that's why it's so important to put an emphasis on the back five and how it should be. It should be part of the a forward's soul almost. Scrummaging should be, and I'm concerned that in modern day rugby, that I know it's always an easy out as well for front rowers. We always know, why did this go wrong? Oh, I wasn't getting enough from behind. That's why I'm getting licked out here. That's always a go-to, and we know front rowers that talk like that. But I'd say a forward needs to have it in his soul, whether it's a front row or back five more, has to respect and appreciate the scrum far more than I think maybe they do in the modern game. I'm just saying it.
Which one of you, I know you're saying they're all 8 and everything like that, but which one of you almost needs the hooker more? Like if you break the seam between Marler and the hooker, you essentially generate that power and almost breaking that seam. Am I right again?
Stop winking at me.
Loosen that bind. But do you need the hooker more than he needs you? I know you all need each other. What I'm saying is, which one of you needs the hooker more? Loose head or tight head?
Well, we need each other.
Yeah, but what
who
I'm
needs
saying
it more? I would argue I need the hooker more.
You'd need it more.
Because we can do more of an attack and all that. But then at the same time, if I take the hooker too much away from Coley and drag him my side, that pulls him in the hole in a position where he doesn't want to come into. So we sort of all need each other at different times for a different task.
With a scrum, is you try and make it like 3 one-on-one matchups. So it's the tight head against the loose head, our hooker against their hooker, and our loose head against their tight head. Sometimes, if you matched up, that's perfect. Or as a tight head, if I'm, say, pushing out on the loose head, their hooker might decide that, I need to attack me. And I always think that if he's coming at me, he's twisted his body. So therefore, he opens himself up to be attacked by our hooker. So actually, if their hooker's coming at me, I need our hooker more because I need him to then attack their hooker. And if we get some go forward somewhere, we'll get it everywhere. But similarly, say, if they have a tight head that is coming in, we need our hooker to be able to stop that and create a block so then Joe can get under. Because if a tight head just disappears into the scrum, because you've played against teams that if you sometimes don't have a great scrummager and hooker, the tight head just goes on the angle. All the pressure that you're putting on him, he can just go turn in, under your hooker, and he looks like he's going forward. Whereas you have like some of the best hookers that can block that tight head, then the tight head turns in and he's like, I'm fucked because Joe's underneath him. Like as a tight head, when I'm setting up against Joe, I'm trying to say, or as Lou said, I'm like, I need to give Joe as least to push on as possible. So I'm trying to give Joe literally my shoulder. So my head and my neck, I'm trying to line up against Joe and I'm trying to make him hit. I'm trying to basically get my shoulder, my AC joint, whatever, say on the back of Joe's neck. And that's all everything's trying to push through this shoulder. But as soon as I turn in slightly, I then expose my ribs, my chest. If my shoulder goes, like you expose all of this for Joe to push on. And if you ever had a man like that size underneath here, he's going to win.
So on the bind phase, I'm trying to get my head right into the nook and cranny of his neck there to try and entice him to go inside so that he does open himself up as early as possible so that I can get under him as quickly as possible and then be in a position where I can drive under him and keep going. Fuck me dead. It's so hard to do when you've got a tight head that's giving you no space whatsoever to try and manoeuvre that which then means that sometimes you'll get a loose head trying to force that situation. And in doing that, I'll end up kicking my hips out and leaving the hooker and leaving that attachment so that I haven't got any force to go, and then try and attack him on my own. And then it's fucking easy for Coley or a tight head that's able to then just stay on me, lose me out the scrum completely, and then pile straight through with the power that's coming from behind him.
So obviously you both started out when the scrums evolved and the rules have changed. So the way it is set up now, it's obviously a lot more controlled than it ever was.
Yes.
Like, you know, how it used to be. It was pretty barbaric, to be fair. Like, literally,
Mate,
waboo.
we've watched back and
Mental.
some of the clips and you're like, what the
Wow,
fuck
what
were we
were you
ever
doing?
doing?
Just a mess. They are just a
And
mess.
talking to the younger boys now, when we try and talk them through it, where they hadn't even seen scrums like that on TV with it. They're like, you used to do what? It was like basically just a run up into the thing, and
half of it would
was
end
a
up on the
shit
floor, and you couldn't turn your head for like 3 days after the Saturday. Like, you get to like Tuesday, and you still was so sore through your like neck, straps, shoulders, because you'd spent 80 minutes just face planting, like, you know, because it was all basically the engagement, wasn't it?
and the
barely
people that
stayed
used to
up
say,
there.
"Oh, scrums used to be better," you know, back then, you went, go back and watch those games. There was hardly any. People moan about incomplete scrums now or resets all the time. You're like, there was never a fucking completed scrum back then anyway.
That was a mess.
It was a
like
fucking
that
shit
engagement
fight.
was barbaric. So I want to ask you, how much pain is it? So once, obviously, a lot of them used to end up on the deck. So clap scrum, what's that like?
Occasionally, you can come up against someone who, and sometimes it's encouraged, but it shouldn't be. Occasionally, people will still continue to drive on a collapsed scrum in order to try and paint a picture that they're dominant and going forward. You run the risk. You know, it's like it collapses. We've spoken about bent backs and hinging, and everyone's heads just hit into the deck, and then you continue with that power going over to. But you're in fucking all sorts of. You're in a bad enough position as it is when it's stable and up, but when you're down there and it's completely uncontrolled, especially for a hooker, fuck me, like the hookers haven't even got their arms to try and wriggle out of it. So it can be a pretty dangerous place. In fact, a very dangerous place. You know, we all know people that have had serious injuries on the back of it, and that's why it's so important to get it so right.
When you guys are binding, like transfer a weight on that bind, like the refs sometimes free kick and things like over leaning, the weight coming through the bind, like what does that entail?
Well, the law says there shouldn't be any preloading of the weight, because they did a load of research into particularly hookers' necks and axial
Yeah.
loading that was like causing that was getting a lot of hookers that were having to take so much weight on their heads and their necks. It was causing a lot of neck issues and pain down your arms and nerve issues and stuff like that. So the law says you can't preload any weight. Now there's loads of laws in our game, and there'll always be people trying to find different ways to gain an advantage or bend those laws slightly. It depends on what you want to achieve out of it, because sometimes there's benefit to putting a lot of weight on the opposition if you feel like that they're pretty good at getting out of it and you want to stop that and think. But then there's a negative side to it for yourself, where you can end up getting too long and outside of a position that's good to push from, like with your legs bent, because you have to put more weight on them, so you get long-legged, and you're not in a position to actually exert any pressure onto them. So, you know, this fucker's always putting weight on me, like early doors, and it does my nut in. You wonder why my back's like it is. All the fucking scrums against him. And don't you dare sit there and say you don't, because I have got several pieces of your scalp that came off on my shoulder.
Funny, it's only you though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Maybe it's me putting the weight on. I haven't thought about this. Either way, can you stop leaving your scalp on my shoulder,
I would love
please?
to, yeah. I'd like that scalp back, please.
It'd get up, honestly, at one point, I could peel it like off like that and go, do you want that back? And then he could just stick it back on and then just tape around it.
The rubbing. I've got to ask about that then. Like the rubbing of the head, the scalp and all that. Like,
The ears.
is there a perfect haircut for a more like annoying scrum? So like if you've obviously got like being bald,
What did you say?
Being bold.
Bold.
Why are you pointing at me? Point at him.
Am I bold?
He's got a cap on.
It's bold.
Being bold.
Bald.
Bold. Being
Yeah,
bold.
bald.
Bold.
Baldy.
Bold. Whatever.
I didn't call you baldy.
But like, you know what I mean? Like, I've been wrestling Brownie, right, in training.
Oh.
The biz.
Has he?
And he's like bicked his head.
Bicked, but it's just grown back a little bit.
Just enough,
So it
right? So he's
catches.
like rubbing against me, and it's just like sandpaper.
Oh, he's horrible.
So my point is, like, is there like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd say
friction,
that's probably,
perfect length.
perfect length.
Scrum cap can be annoying because they sometimes like rub, and that's why I normally like the ear ends up bleeding because of that. So you just have to tape it down.
What about that scrum where our ears locked?
We had things in we did one in it was in a game. I think we played Queen's Leicester. We've had two. I think one was in training. The first one was in training. It's like gone crouched behind. As our heads have come together, our ears have perfectly like just
aligned
and like overlapped, and it was like
all the pressure
is
of these
going for our ear.
scrums were locked.
And it was like,
this.
I'm gonna rip my ear off. And he's like, oh my god, my ears are set. And it was set. Thankfully, they've come apart, and like boom, and both of us just gone, oh, like that. There's
Got drilled.
yeah, I don't care. But honestly, it was like, oh my god, I thought I was gonna lose my ear there. And he was like, yeah, that was weird. It happened in a game. And basically, yeah, we've come together, and our ears have just literally like they've locked, and just like, oh no, it's coming off, literally. And thankfully, it moves. But yeah.
Scrum pox, lads. Come on then. Have either of you had it?
Yeah, loads.
Yeah.
Is it
Irritating?
It's
No,
the same as
it's
it's
herpes.
herpes.
So once it's in
Once
your
you've had
system,
it, you've always got it.
It's always in your system.
Not always got it, but it's always
in your system. And
Ready.
Yeah. It can flare up.
ready
yeah.
to come.
Yeah.
Always ready.
That's why you've always had the beard for so long.
Always beard is just hiding it all. It's just flaking.
It's just like a cold sore, isn't it? Some people have cold sores on their lips, and they get it when they get.
But
run
we
down
get
or-
it, like,
but
on
yeah,
our
we
heads,
obviously get
on
it
our
wherever we
ears.
get on our ears or our heads or whatever, where we've got it originally.
And it's not a case of not being hygienic, Ben. Honestly, it's not. Just putting it all out there. Just embrace it. I mean, tape it up, obviously, but just don't have any judgment of any of your teammates that have got scrum pox, because there's a reason they've got it. Because they're going to work for you, baby.
Do you remember that? We trained against Georgia in the Fallow Week.
Which one?
We trained against Georgia in the Fallow Week. The first time we ever did it.
Oh,
It was at
at
that school. And we did some
Latin.
live scrums, yeah. And their hooker had it on the top of his head, and they basically taped a plastic bag to his head, and they honestly, the hooker had a bald
It's
head.
important to cover it.
Yeah.
It's very,
And it was like
very contagious.
we were like,
and he's got a co-op bag.
he's
on
literally
top.
like, honestly,
Like a bag for life. And he's like, is he strapped to the
no,
bottom?
they've
like a scrum cap?
literally just cut out a bit of like the plastic and like taped it on his head in a square. And we were like, he's obviously got scrum pox. He's like, we don't want it. He's like, no, it'd be fine. We've covered it up. We're like, it's going to come off. No, it's covered up. And we're like, right, doc, order some antivirals in now. We'll start taking them. And then, like, honestly, we were just like, cheers. So yeah.
Well, Georgia are renowned for scrummaging.
Yeah,
South Africa, of course, they are.
yeah.
But like, why? What makes them so good? Is it the mentality behind it?
Yes, mentality, which I think
Start with Georgia then. I think it's a bigger mentality driven for Georgia because, okay, I'm playing down scrums a little bit, but it's more of a closed skill in some regard, isn't it? Like compared to the whole part of the game, they've also got a population that is based more around strong physical men and have just purely focused on scrummaging for years, haven't they? Like some of the big Georgian tight heads that they're a bit Kubriashvili.
Dubrikashvili was
Yes.
it? And there was Dubrikashvili who's like Toulon, and yeah, they're all fucking brilliant. But I think, yeah, probably culturally within Georgian rugby, it comes from like, or it's what you sort of get told by the Georgians, it's part of that man test in some regards.
Yeah.
They come from like wrestling backgrounds and that kind of stuff, and it's like a one-on-one, and their rugby is that it's based around the scrum.
It's that style of
yeah.
rugby, yeah.
And that's how they get their advantage, and that's obviously because part of it's they've built up that reputation. It's then you drill at home, that's your advantage. So we are going to do that all the time. And it come again, we talk about setting the scrum. I think South Africa is like, it's part of their identity. And whereas sometimes in, say, Europe, we go, French are different, but like we pick a front row to scrum, and then your second row is like, we'll have a big guy and a line out forward. Whereas you look at South Africa, I mean, they've got freak athletes, but they go, right, we'll pick two scrummagers in the second row. France, where it's like, actually the back row can do the line outs. The second rows, you're 120 plus kilos, like Nale, Pape, like those kind of blokes. I'm playing them in like, and they're just ginormous men. like they have at the minute, and you kind of like they're just ginormous men, and it's like, right, you're to push and you're to hit things and be physical, and that part of your job is you're dominating the scrum.
So the reason Georgia and South Africa is culturally, for years, they've put such an emphasis on the scrum, and then that's bled into the culture of it, and then breeding even more because
also,
you're like, we want these sort of players.
And you get a reputation of the 50-50 stuff start going your way, because sometimes actually...
It's then spoken about in the press
Yeah.
constantly, where you're like, Georgia got unbelievable scrum, South Africa got unbelievable scrum. Referees, whether they say they read it or not, but if that narrative's out there, they're hearing it, and then the 50-50 call, right, then that makes you grow another leg. If you're getting these 50-50 calls all the time and you're always being praised for having one of the best scrums in the world, then it's just like a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like, fucking hell, we rule the scrum here.
We both make some great points. You know, I'm genuinely intrigued.
Don't patronise us.
But the back rows staying on, noticeable difference when they stay on and when they come off early. In terms of you're scrummaging, we're defending. Flank is always told, you know, get off, and you know the backs are played. Like, is it noticeable when they're kind of half, you know, off, shoulders not bound, they're kind of waiting to get off to defend?
Yeah,
I feel that.
I can 100% feel when we're not getting as much from the back rowers, particularly if they're not engaged on it. You can feel it, and actually easier from a loose head point of view. I can see it. You know, I'm in that position where I'm like, hang on, why the fuck is your arm that far out, or you've come to? Can you get your shoulder back on my arse? So I can feel it, but it's not until you actually watch the scrums back or whatever as to why they're doing it. And then if you're having the conversation of why are you coming off early? What are you worrying about here? What are you looking at? Why? Or is it a case of you just can't be asked to push? Or have you got the wrong size studs in? Fuck me. The amount of times where I've had a back rower where they've just got these skinny little things in. I'm like, mate, are you taking the piss? You're behind. Put a fucking stud in your boot, and they'll look at me with exactly the same face that you're looking at me there. Like, what are you on about, mate? It doesn't make a difference. Yes, it does make a difference, Ben.
The only reason I'm looking at you like that because I'm pretty sure you've scrummed in Preds before. For those that don't know, Preds are basically a boot that backs wear. I'm pretty sure I've seen you scrumming them.
David Beckham, yeah.
Sorry, David Beckham. Do you remember that video?
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah.
Hi, it's David. David Beckham. No, we got that. No, good point. However, good point.
He was just showing
I have scrummed
like what a difference they make.
Yes.
No, because in the more recent times where I've worn them, I then put in a fucking stud that's this fucking long, Ben, not this long.
Nice.
And I know you probably think there's not a big difference between something that's this big and this big, but in my world, that's everything to me. All right?
With the ref, you said about how perception and maybe you get the 50-50 calls. A lot of people know, you know, the ref comes in the change before the game and they love a yarn with the front rowers.
Not all refs. Not all refs love a yarn. There's the odd ref that will just come in and go to the scrum coach.
Yeah, we did have one ref. England played Wales. I can't remember if it was a warm-up game or something like that. But basically, I think the talk had been about the scrum, and I'd have been in the week in the press, it'd been that. And he literally came in, and the front row was gathered because the referee comes in. It's like, right, we're going to speak to the referee. We sat there. He turned his back to us and went to our scrum coach. I'm not going to talk to the front rows today, but you need to tell them that they need to get their buy-in, stay square, and stay up. And that's the game. And it was like, and he walked out, and it was like,
what a way to build a rapport.
But he's only loud enough that we could hear, and it was like, just turn around. But he didn't. So anyway.
I think massaging the referee, and most, if not all, people playing our sport, professional sport, have an ego of some size. And referees are included in that. They want to be part of the, you know, usually they're a failed rugby player, or they get...
No, carry on. But they love the sport.
No,
don't
okay.
They love the sport.
They love the sport as much as we do. So they want to be in the mixer and have their moment as well, as much as we all want our moment. But you know, I think there's ways of managing referees that we do a lot of homework on referees and what penalties they tend to go for, or their sort of their trend of
it's
easy
tough for
out.
I don't envy referees because a lot of them haven't played in the front row. You're getting reports from, say, other people that may or may not have played in the front row, or like there's a referee's report that's come from a scrummager, but he's a loose head rather than a tight head and played years ago, all that kind of stuff. So they get a lot of information bombarded at them. And also with the narrative somewhere around the scrum is like, oh, it's either like
speed it up, don't referee it, speed up the game, make it more attractive.
Get ball in, ball out. And so they're almost told not to make decisions. And that's where it kind of like can become tough for referees, because obviously they've been told to speed the game up, and actually the scrum is an important part. In some regards, I think the rules were made so it's simpler for referees to, a bit like, say, line out wise, they have a defensive mark and the defense can't move off the mark, and then the attack can set the gap. Like scrum time, it should be like, all right, defense, there's your mark. Attack, you make the gap as big as you want. But if it goes down, I'll penalise you. Or, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. There should be ways of making it easier for referees to, because then you can actually get to the contest, which is what people want to see, and what actually the contest, which is when both packs are pushing against each other. That's what wears teams out. That's what creates, you know, things around the park and creates fatigue in the game. So you need to get to that point in the game, which can be sometimes can take longer than it should. But that's sometimes because of the perceived pressure on the referees, or the outside pressure of like, speed the game up, or you can't have too many scrum penalties, or you can't do this, you can't do that. And it's like, they just kind of go, right, well, we just won't referee it.
Well, that's why, because there is so much pressure on them, and it is such a hard job to do in terms of making a split second call, depending on bind or thinking that could just be milliseconds of a movement, that the scrum collapses or thingy,
lose the game or win the game, and they get the
that's why it's so important
Yeah.
that you try as hard as you can to be putting your arm around that referee pre-game, or as much as possible, to try and build a rapport with them, to say, look, I want to make your job as easy as possible, and this is how, you know, if I can help you out, if you want me to keep the scrum up, I'm going to, do you know what I mean? Having little talks like that. I think South Africa spoke a lot about that in the 2019 documentary they did, that the amount of work that they put into Garcés, and how they massaged his ego and all this lot, and really swayed on that way. So the early 50-50 calls were like straight, you know, thank you for, I've got someone out here supporting me as well. So it's important to try and get, you're never going to win, like, if you're going back at the referee all the time and questioning them all the time, and standing up and moaning to touch judges all the time, and, you know, thinking that you know best all the time. And it's always better to be submissive and stuff rather than Mr. Know-It-All, naming no names.
Once you've scrummed, right, the ball's been played, and you have someone like myself screaming at you to get around the corner in attack, how does it feel coming out the scrum and then having to move?
Right, if you've gone forward like 2 inches, you think, I can run around.
Well, you've got a spike as well of adrenaline.
But there have been times when you've been under pressure and you've gone backwards, and you literally, your back's screaming, your quads are screaming. It's like, you almost like your central nervous system was like shuts down. You know, say you're in the gym, and you might not know this, Ben, but like you say you do like 10, I don't know, real heavy squats or deadlifts, but at least you do to the point where you can't lift the final rep. You know what I mean? Like you do set reps, and actually sometimes you sit down and you're like, like lightheaded, but you feel like fatigued.
Or if it's a stalemate scrum and it's like a 15, 20 second scrum, you're like...
Are they the worst?
Oh my God. The long scrums that just go on and neither side's budging.
Yeah, they drain you. And then to basically get it from that static and then run, especially in the front row as well, it's like, it's a bit different. Because I was listening, reading something about second row saying like, you know, I do a squat and it's like me squatting in the gym, but like, it's like, you get that, but we're actually at the front row, we're squatting, but at the same time, it's like a eccentric squat because someone's pushing back against us, you know what I mean? We're not sort of extending squat. It's almost like, here's a really heavy weight, now just try and drop it to the floor as slowly as possible. And it's like that kind of balance. And say, come out of that and it's like, right, now run or bend over. You're like,
well, yeah. So when you're shouting, get round the corner, depending on what mood we're in, or whether we've gone back, or if it's a stalemate, or whether we like you or not, you might get the response, fuck off, you get round the corner. Or fuck off, do a show and go. Or fuck off, just do a drop goal. Or I'm not getting there. That's the sort of response.
I've got the short side.
yeah.
Other than your respective selves, who's the hardest person you scrummage against?
Carl Heyman.
Why?
Not only was he massive and strong, which usually if you're too tall as a tight head, sometimes it can compromise you, but he had the ability, and it's probably a little bit warped because it was the older laws, but he still had the ability then to not cheat. Like, he was able to push me backwards at a rate of knots without turning in or being illegal. It was just pure and I could then feel all the power just going through me. And I was like, well, I've got no answer to this, because if I kick my arse out, he's just going to power straight through. If I stay under him, I'm still going backwards. And yeah, I just always remember that he has had that ability to scrum so legal, which, believe it or not, is quite rare. It is quite rare, because you look at most scrums that are going forward, very rarely do you see all spines aligned going in one direction. Usually someone has to create some sort of angle against their opposite man to then create them to be unstable and then get everyone to power through you like that. But he had the ability to do that, so for me it was always him.
Coley?
Mine, probably said this before, but Thomas Domingo at Clermont in France. All 5'8" of him, and 100 and whatever it was, 15 kilos. Like, he was dense. Squat,
like,
yeah.
Wider than he was tall.
Yeah, but just incredibly strong. Like, no matter what position you got him in, he could literally, like, he bent back. Even if you got him to bend his back, he could just pick you off the floor. And he was just, yeah, he was incredibly good. He always played played against him like Clermont in France, so he had good second rows and good hookers alongside him. So if he was tight, if you did try and turn in to escape him, normally there was a hooker blocking you, and like, he could get in an awkward position. But his 120 kilo or 125 kilo second row, who's grunting, then would pick him up and pick you up and stuff you. But yeah, no, I never had a good day against him.
Him and Nicolas Ma, the two, they're both quite similar, squat, short thing. As a combination, worked perfectly together. Nicolas Ma was, I describe him as the king of dispersing pressure. So any which way I would try and push against him, it would feel like I'm not pushing against anything, but in a negative way. It's not like he just disappeared and I could pile through him. He was able to, whatever pressure I put on him, he would be able to turn a certain way or change his bind a certain way that meant I was somehow then giving him more strength to pile straight through me. I was like, what the fuck? He was just had that ability to change an angle.
Yeah. And he wasn't a big man mass.
No.
He was thick, but
Yeah.
he'd be like 115 kilos at
Really
most.
awkward squat.
Yeah.
Those,
But again,
really hard.
I remember he had Perpignan, like Robbins Charlie Watchu, who was like 130 odd kilos behind him, and in France he'd have someone else. So like, again, they would be those guys that would almost have the strength to sort of pick the up and down, left, right, but then they had the forward and back went from the ginormous guy behind them.
Naturally, the next question is obviously who's the worst scrummagers we've ever come up against.
You'd think so, but we're all about the love on this podcast, so we wouldn't want to out someone like that.
And we wouldn't either, because as we alluded
tell
to
you one
earlier,
thing, Joe.
everyone's got a good scrum in them
They have.
at one point or another.
But I tell you, one of the worst scrummaging displays I've ever seen.
Oh, God, were we involved in it?
Leicester versus Quins.
What?
Leicester versus Quins at Twickenham. You know what's coming.
Oh, here we go. Fucking hell.
And,
Always run the...
Marler, to be fair, you put your hand up, which I'm going to. This is going to follow my next question. To be fair,
Okay, fine.
you had to go from loose head to tight
It was
head.
big game
Whatever.
14 or something like that.
You moved from loose head to tight head.
We were doing it. Hang on, we were doing it context. We were doing a decent job on you.
very
weren't we?
good. You were up winning.
Yeah, I
You're
think
doing
it was
a good
like
job.
23-14 or something, or 20.
Probably more than that.
There was one year we got you though, wasn't there? When
Yeah,
they
this
must
is
have
the
that.
game. But you had to swap to tight head, didn't you? Because both tight heads went off.
So both tight heads went off, as in they were getting pinged off the park, and I think one got yellow carded, and one got
Someone got
Sink and
injured.
Collier got yellow carded and injured. So then we had a loose head on the bench, and it was whatever. And they said, "Oh, will you go over the other side?" I was like, "Yeah, why not? I don't really give a fuck. Go on, I'll be able to just do half a job, won't I?" And I remember Santi, the guy who came on, he said, "Are you sure, amigo? Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah, you're."
Where's he from? Is he Puss in Boots?
Carry on, Joe.
Aha.
Anyway, I said, "Yeah, don't worry about it, mate. It's fine. We just cheat our way out of it somehow." Because he was like 15 kilos lighter than me, so I was like, "I'm not sure that's the play." Neck minute, like, you couldn't get the reverse lights faster And he's doing the same giggle that I felt him doing on the sideline because you weren't in that scrum. You'd gone off by then. And I could see him pissing himself on the side, like, ah! And I'm just going backwards at a rate of knots. And we concede 2 tries. You get like big.
You end up drawing.
And we end up drawing 30 or whatever.
You kept us up that year.
Cheers. No worries. And in my defence, the only defence I have was I didn't give away a penalty.
Mate,
I didn't give away a penalty.
You can go backwards in a scrum.
You can go backwards.
It's not illegal to go backwards in a scrum.
I made sure I went back legally, just really, really fast.
Didn't you do that at Quins once? Who were you playing?
Was Saris. That's a different type.
And you had a man in the bin already, didn't you?
We had a man in the bin, so I had Jack Clifford behind me in the row, and I was like, oh my God. DC, we'd given away 2 penalties on the 5 metre line, 5 metres out from ours, and DC, Danny Kerr was like, mate, they're saying if we're giving away another penalty, we're going to lose another person to the bin and probably a penalty try. And I was like, cool. And it was me and Adam Jones and Dave Ward. And we were like, okay, so what are you asking? He was like, well, he had a similar knowledge to you, actually, Ben. Probably less knowledge to you, Ben, of the scrums. Is there any way you could maybe, not give away a pen this next scrum, or is there any way you could like maneuver it so it's like legally okay or whatever? Me and Bomber looking at him like, we're already trying our fucking hardest to not give away a pen, like the thing. And we sort of conceded the fact, we were like, the best thing to do here, it's on the touchline, is to try and give it a go, and then if we don't get it right, just go back legally, so they score in the corner.
Mission, basically.
Basically, you put the flag up legally, and they score in the corner, and then they have to go for the kick. So yes, Bomb being the Lions and Welsh legend that he is, coming to Quins, that was a pretty tough pill to swallow for him. Obviously, I'm fine with it because I've been going backwards all my life, and that's what happened. They scored in the corner, they missed the kick at goal, and we won the game by like 3 points. And DC to this day is still like, told you.
My question is though, people sometimes think, you can play both sides. And obviously, Thomas DeToit, who was in our team of the year, can play both sides, but not many can. But some people assume that you just can, and that movement from loose head to tight head or tight head to loose head would just be easy, but it's just not.
Right. So who have we got in World Rugby? We've got Thomas DeToit, we've got Big Trev, both from South Africa. In fact, Big Trev Davison from Northampton.
Yes.
Oh God.
Logo Manipola used to play both for Leicester.
Logo. Okay. Who else have we got?
I don't want to be upsetting anyone here.
James Slipper has done it occasionally.
Yes. He's probably the odd one out because he's more of a looser going to tight. I would say, Ben.
Your point is, not many, right?
Not many.
Not many.
Thing, isn't it?
And also, it's less than a handful.
You can, but not at a great high level as we've seen. Anyone can play both sides, but whether you can play both sides well, which those 4 or 5 can do, is...
You've actually played both sides, though, haven't you, Dan?
I used to play loose head, yeah. And when I first started, this is how old I am, there was one prop on the bench, and that would be me. And I'd live in fear, because it'd be like Julian White would start at tight head, and then Marcus Ayertz would be loose head, and Marcus Ayertz would make a tackle and lie on the floor for 3 minutes. So every then get up and run off. So every couple of minutes in the game, I would be up thinking, I'm going to have to go on at loose head. I had to go on against Mass at Perpignan once at loose head. But I remember Ayertz basically came up to me once after the warm-up, and he's like, be aware of the ankle. I'm like, what? He's like,
be aware of the ankle?
That's not what you want to hear.
Yeah, no. He's like, beware. He pointed at his own ankle.
Oh, his own ankle.
Oh, no. So literally ruined my entire first half. Couldn't eat any sweets, do anything on the bench, because I was just like living in fear that his ankle was going to give up.
So is it easier from a tight head to go to a loose head, or a loose head to go tight head?
Tight head to loose head. I would say...
Tight head to loose head is easier.
Easy, because I'd say the tight heads today generally are big men. Like, you think of the South African guys we spoke about, Thomas DeToit and stuff, he's a big 130 plus kilo man. And I'd say it's easier to get by pure strength at loose head than pure strength. I think you have to be technical in strength at tight head, but you can kind of get by strength at loose head. And that's where I say I think it'd be harder for a loose head to go to tight head, because you're getting attacked from everywhere. Whereas if you go to loose head, it's kind of like, I'll just use my strength to anchor in for as long as I can.
Couple of questions actually to finish up.
Can't wait.
Question from Ewan.
Hit me.
What is your favourite dark arts in the scrum?
Oh. Are there dark arts? It's not really dark
You like
arts.
a shirt lift.
Oh, you invented that, really, didn't you?
I didn't invent the shirt lift.
I remember Twickenham, big game, we had a scrum, and he basically just decided to lift my shirt up. So I was like, I'll just lift yours up then, Joe. And there's just two of us
Whose
just
dart's
lifting
worse?
each other's shirts up.
I
Like,
lost out again.
yeah.
I did lose out again. There's not really dark arts, is there?
No.
I did get one guy a couple of years ago who loves to bind short on a loosehead's shoulder to sort of make it harder for me to be able to bind or get a long bind, which is sort of illegal. You're meant to both be able to bind on each other's backs and do that, so you'd always do that. And he left the club, and I knew that he loved doing that, and he joined this other club, and it was the first game back against each other. And I emptied a pot of Vass on my left shoulder, like all over my shirt. I've just emptied a pot of Vass all over it. And he's gone to get his bind on the first scrum and just slipped off. Pre-engaged, free kick, blah. The physio comes on again. I'm like, lather it all back on, blah. Every scrum, he just can't get his bind, but he's come up to me. He's like, what the flying fuck did you have on your shoulder? I was like, I just had loads of Vass that had dripped down from my ears, obviously. He was livid. So there's not really any dark arts that go on.
Can we talk about...
hang on, why was it ever called dark art? Is it just because it's really dark in there?
Yeah, no one knows what's going on.
Pure art. It is an art form, and it's dark.
Who was it that we were playing against, and we're walking through the tunnel, and you just went over and hugged him, and we were playing against them? Was it an Australian team?
Yeah, it was Kepu.
Who then skinned you?
Who then... Fucking hell.
Actually, I thank you for getting scared. That was
great.
You didn't know what to do, did he? You didn't know what to do. You just went over and hugged him.
Because we didn't know each other.
Was that 2016? Was that after the World Cup? It
No, he's
wasn't.
retired then.
Sorry, yeah. No, we played him at Twickenham either 20 because that's when
It
I got.
was 2017.
I got that.
It was 2017. We didn't really know each other, whatever. And he's walking in as I'm walking out, and I just walked up and hugged him, and he was like, I was like, all right, bro, how you doing? And he was like, yeah, right. It's just weirded out, and yes, again, it backfired. I don't know why I do this shit.
No, it's good, mate.
Every time it backfires, and the bloke skins me and goes for a worldie.
He was good, mate. Ball in it.
Oh my god,
Ball
he was
in hand.
quick. He was
very
really
good.
quick.
Yeah.
No, he was very
He was
good.
like a 10-second 100-meter runner.
That's when
least.
I gashed my leg and I was like trying to get the play to stop and the referee was ignoring it. And then so you did me a favour and got skinned on the outside, let him score from 30, and I got to go off. So that's I thank you for that, mate. That's
No, he
always
was a good
iffy.
runner, to be fair.
Yeah, fair.
Question from Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
What is your opinion on scrum halves feeding the ball? Can I just clarify? Scrum halves do not feed the ball.
What do you mean?
Well, we wait for the hooker to put their leg up,
Yeah.
their foot, and then as soon as it is, ball goes in, boom, strikes back so quick.
right.
Now, sometimes
Sometimes.
the pressure is so high they can't actually get their foot up. Then you might feed it a bit.
Right, I'm going to say, one, I don't think there's ever been a gentlemanly contest where the ball has come straight in the middle of the scrum. Even like 50 years ago, and both hookers were hooking for it, like as in, because one, you teed up that way, and the other side's almost is facing away from the ball. So, and I remember Cockers once told me that he once tried to strike for the opposition's ball. He's probably back in the 80s, and he got it from the scrum, and he just got punched in the face like, "Don't strike for my ball." And it's like, whatever, mate. Next one,
It wasn't Cockers that did it to the guy.
Probably, but went to strike against it, and literally just got punched in the face like, "Stop striking for my ball." And that was how you. So you didn't strike for the opposition ball because you just got punched in the face. And like nowadays, I think again, as long as there's some form of like hook, because otherwise, yeah, you just don't want the ball coming in and being fed straight to the 8. As long as there is some form of like hook, even if you put it on the hooker's foot and he hooks it, then
There has
that's
to be
enough.
some sort of jeopardy. Like, it has to be some sort of skill involved in order to get that back. Because people go, "Oh, you're just scraping it back like that," and you go, "No. If you're a hooker and you've got all this pressure going through your neck and you've got no use of your arms, and you're about 6 inches from the floor, get yourself in that position." And then see how easy it is to lift your foot off the ground. So you'll end up releasing pressure, but causing more pressure than you think. Releasing pressure from your foot and causing more pressure to your neck and all that lot. Having the ability to like move it towards your knee and then hook back. Fucking hell.
And also,
it's
got to go through.
Take some skill, whether the ball's fucking.
It's got to go through the loose head's legs, which sometimes it bounces off. The second row and behind, the amount of times they've kneed it back through, or the flanker. So it's still got to go through things to get there. So, like, the feed for me, if you're playing against a team that's like, As long as it's not literally straight to the 8 and playing away. As long as there's some form of.
I used to play
hook.
hooker, and when I wore my Gilbert high tops, and I used to wear shin pads as well, because that was the thing. It was around the similar time that I first met cockers. Actually, I'll try and track down that picture, and I used to just fuck off trying to hook the opposition ball and then just kick them in the shins. And that's why I started wearing shin pads, because I didn't want it to.
Well, it's like that.
happen to
Do you
be
ever
bad.
play?
Plus, I look fucking cool.
Do you ever play sevens?
Yeah, loads.
Whereas, like, if you're a hooker, you basically just kick the ball through the opposition scrum,
Yeah.
and then you create chaos.
Hey,
Good thinking.
we're not just scrum specialists. We're seven specialists now.
We're hooker specialists.
Wait till we start hitting the seven circuit. Me and Coley will be in Hong Kong in no time.
Right, final question to finish. You're on your 5 metre line. Pick the ultimate 8, the scrummaging 8. And you don't have to have played with them, just the ultimate 8. You two are, obviously, you're loose head, you're tight head.
No, I don't. Well, I'm not picking
right.
me.
All right.
No, you guys have got to be in it. So who you haven't? You only need to put your hooker, 2 locks and back row
Oh,
for 1 scrum.
what about? I mean, we both played with him. He was horrible, nuggety, strong, listened. Like, that's the key element for a hooker, listening to like where you need him. Your brother. Now.
Yeah, because he's put on a bit more
Yeah,
timber.
I want your brother
Yeah.
now.
Right,
I
so-
don't want.
But we need to see if we can bend over. That's the
Yeah,
only
he
thing.
can, right. Locks.
Oh,
I'd pick the biggest guys I could find.
Ollie Cohn is up there with giant,
Big human.
and a really good human. And people might go, "Oh, maybe he's too nice." And I'm like, "No, a good human in a way that he would do anything you wanted him to."
And he could bring sausages to the barbecue we're having at yours later on.
To celebrate the pen you've won.
Yeah.
So we're going with Ollie Cohn. I'm choosing Ollie Cohn as one of my rows.
Is he going behind you?
Yes, because
I'll have,
it would be
like,
nice to have an armchair as opposed to a deck chair for the last 10 years.
I'll have
George
like
Robson.
Thomas Lavanini,
Oh, yeah.
because he was
my
like
God.
128 kilos.
And
And
we're picking them just for this one scrum.
yeah,
are we?
just one
One
scrum.
Because
scrum.
if you're
This
picking
is just it.
Lavanini,
Yeah.
then you're only picking him for 10 minutes
Well,
before he's
the
red carded.
problem with Thomas, and God love him, but as soon as that scrum breaks away and you go multi-face, he's probably getting red carded. And when then they're kicking the goal, so you've lost the game
But
anyway.
it's one scrum, so he's on the field for that.
It's one scrum,
Perfect,
fine.
yeah,
Love you,
right.
Thomas.
Back row. I want Willem Alberts behind me.
Oh wow.
Oh, he's
Wow.
massive.
I want him behind me.
Is it Willem Alberts from his Stade Francais stage where he was about 145?
Yes, that one.
Big-
I'm actually now
big piece of
also.
kit.
I'm
So how
also,
much weight is on that one side of the scrum? If we do your correct weight,
It's a fair whack.
it's about 400 kilos.
What flank are you having behind you?
Behind me, do they have to be an out and out 7?
No.
Oh.
Alberts wasn't. He's 6'8".
Can I pick George Martin? I'll go George Martin.
Oh,
Yeah, like that.
We've basically got 4 second rows in the row. Yeah. And,
And
an
then 8 to finish up.
he wants Billy
I
or
thought you might go
Jasper.
Mo Vatterfalou. Didn't you play with him for a little? He was a big bloke at Quince.
Yeah, he was, and he'd work hard.
But not big as-
he was a
yeah.
big hitter and a big carrier.
Yeah.
He's not like your scrum
So the 8, firing you in.
pig.
And do you want
He's
him?
a
Do you want
scrum
him in the
pig.
chariot position? Is it the chariot?
Minty.
No, I want him in, pushing.
Well, yeah, I know. Just like bang. Though.
You let me have Alberts, so let's keep the South African theme, and we'll go with your guy Visa,
Jasper Wiese.
Jasper Visa.
Decent pack, lads. I reckon you win the pen, boot it out, barbecue, and Ollie's bringing the Conan's
Sausages.
bringing the sausages. Marler, thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening to Scrums. I enjoyed it.
Did you?
I did, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
And there you go.
Thanks for having
Thanks.
me. Scrum pigs.